Hello everyone, it's great to be back with you again. The holidays are over, my daughter is married, and all's well with the world. Or maybe not. But in any case, what I wanted to speak with you about today came up out of a conversation in my confirmation class. We happen to be talking about laws in the Torah and where the Mishnah and the Talmud fit in with all that. And we ended up talking about the laws of Shabbat. And I use that as an example because the Torah tells us the laws of Shabbat and that the punishment for violating the Shabbat is the death penalty. But the Torah doesn't explain much, and that's where the Mishnah and the Talmud come in and explain us the why and the how of the laws of Shabbat, and become very specific. And one of the members of the class said that she began to question what Judaism is and about, and all these laws and death penalties and being cut off, and what does that mean? And I have been waiting almost 3 years for someone in the class to ask that question or to make that statement. And I see the value in taking the time to really explain the whys and wherefores and hows of our Jewish tradition, our Jewish law, and how that fits in. So let's get into it. Oftentimes I hear adults who say to me that they have no time for the rituals or the practice of Judaism, that they don't believe in ritual and how that fits in with their lives. And that makes perfect sense, because no one ever took the time to explain the value of our traditions, the value of Jewish law, and how it's actually observed. So in this short presentation, I'm going to give you a taste of what Jewish law is about and why we do what we do. So I had an interesting conversation several years ago with someone who said that they just don't think ritual is important. And I said, really? I said, I said, well, why don't you come to services once in a while? Why don't you come? He says, well, I don't believe in it. And he said, besides, I have so many things to do on a Sunday morning that I don't have time to come to morning minyan on a Sunday. I said, really, what do you do on a Sunday morning? He says, well, first thing when I get up, I go run out to the store and get a newspaper. And I said, you do this every Sunday? He goes, yep, every Sunday. I go out to the store first thing and get the newspaper. What do you do after that? He said, well, I sit down, I get a cup of coffee, and I sit down and watch and read the paper. I said, what do you do after that? He said, well, by that time, I'm ready to watch some of the pregame shows for the football games that day. I said, okay, and what do you do after that? He said, well, I watch the football games. Okay, and what do you do after that? So, well, in between the two, I will maybe go out and do some yard work or whatever, and then I come back in and watch the second game. And what do you do after that? I have dinner. I said, and you do that every Sunday? He said, like clockwork. I said, and you don't believe in ritual? So, we all have our rituals. What this gentleman meant, and I take it seriously. It's a cute little story, but I take it very seriously. We don't understand the idea of Jewish ritual. And so I'll share with you what I shared with the class last night. If you want a relationship, a serious relationship with someone, with anyone, there are certain I have to's that go along with that relationship. A parent and a child, there are certain I have to's. The parent must take care for the child, feed the child, clothe the child, provide shelter. These are I have to's that go along with that relationship. In return, the child should respect listen to the parent, do what the parent tells them to do, and and learn from the parent. That's part of that relationship. In a partnership relationship, husband, wife, partners, wherever it might be, there are certain I have to's there as well. For instance, if a husband, I'll use the case here, if a husband decides that he wants to travel a little while, doesn't tell his wife, and comes back a month or 2 months later and says, "Hi, how are you, dear?" He's likely to be greeted with sharp objects and pots and pans. Well, why is that? If you love that person, why would that be the case? Well, that's exactly the point, is that if you want a true relationship, then you connect. There are certain I have to's. In Judaism, we call those I have to's mitzvot, commandments. And if you want a relationship with the Creator, if you want a relationship with God, then there are certain I have to's that are imperative in that relationship. If you want a relationship with God, then you do the mitzvot, because that's what God tells us are necessary for that relationship. If you don't want a relationship with God, that's fine too. But then don't blame God for what happens in your life. There's a two-way street here. So, in essence, the mitzvot, the commandments that we have, are meant to tie us in together with the Creator, with God, as well as tying us together with community. Because if as a community we keep kosher in the synagogue, if as a community we pray together, if as a community we put on talit and tefillin, then we create not just a relationship with God, but also a relationship with the community and with those around us. This is really the essence of the mitzvot, the commandments. It's a way for us to connect on so many levels. And yes, I know that there are some mitzvot that are a little esoteric, that have maybe even no explanation whatsoever. So for instance, keeping kosher. Now we can say that there are reasons why, health reasons why you keep kosher, but nowhere in the Torah does it tell us why. The laws of shatnez, of not mixing wool and linen in the same garment. Nowhere is it written why we do that. We can come up with reasons for not doing that, for not mixing wool and linen in the same garment, but the Torah does not tell us why. These are laws that are beyond our comprehension. As I said, maybe a little esoteric. And so the example I like to give is this, that God has the perspective of eternity. We have the perspective of our few years here on this earth. And so when we as parents, and I'll use this example, when we as parents are teaching our children, and we tell them, for instance, eat your broccoli. I don't like broccoli. It smells funny. It doesn't taste so good. Eat your broccoli. Why? Well, it's good for you. Well, why? At this point, trying to explain to a young child the idea of vitamins and minerals and calcium and all sorts of other things that broccoli is good, why broccoli is good for you, then we're out of explanations. There's no way for us to really explain that to a 3, 4, or 5-year-old. So we just say, just do it. And so these laws that we have is God's way of saying, I know what is spiritually healthy for you as a Jewish person. Just do it. So that's the idea of these laws that we really have no rational explanation. Do we have a rational explanation for don't murder? Sure. Do we have a rational explanation for don't steal? Sure. So those are laws that do have rational explanation. So the other category of laws that we have, so we have laws with rational explanation, laws without rational explanation, and there's actually a third category of laws, and these are the laws regarding our holy days. Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, all these different holidays, Passover, and all these different holidays have different laws associated with them. And so that's the third category of laws. Some of them are for us to take a moment in time, to pause, to reflect. Rosh Hashanah, Shabbat, Yom Kippur. These are times for us to reflect and look at our lives and take a moment for ourselves. Then we have holidays like Hanukkah, Purim, Passover, Sukkot, Shavuot. These are holy days, these are festivals that mark our history as Jewish people. Passover, the Exodus. Shavuot, the receiving of Torah at Sinai. Sukkot, when marking the time that we spent living with God's glory and living in booths, in temporary dwelling as we traveled through the wilderness. Hanukkah, the story of the Maccabees and the rebellion and civil war that occurred and defeating the Assyrian Greeks. Purim, the defeating of Haman and surviving that event. All these mark our history. So we have these holy days for us, and each one of them have their rituals. And so that's the third category of commandments. So I hope in this short lesson that you have picked up just a little bit that there's a method to the madness of Judaism. As we move forward, we'll discuss each of these a little further and in detail. And I wish all of you shalom, peace. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.